Well, as I said in the intro, no, specific particular order. And forgive my voice. I've got a little bug. I'm ashamed to say, but I do. Went through with family, and I got it too. So
We are
sleep.
socially distanced.
We are
at least 20 inches.
At least 20 inches. Yeah. So sleep habits. And again, we talk about sleep, but I appreciate somebody asked. I meant to pull their name out and I forgot. So forgive me. But somebody asked specifically about just sleep habits. And as I started writing them down, we just talked about, man, there's a lot to cover. And you got everybody out there saying, this pill, this mattress, this whatever is going to cure your sleep things. And of course, the functional medicine, Dr. James would say it's everything.
That's everything. I was surprised by how many things you brought out just with you thinking about it. It's like, gosh, yeah,
I know.
I think people will be surprised.
Well, hopefully we'll do justice to helping you root out through this, what you're doing well. And oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that. So first one for whatever, I think I thought of caffeine first because I'm doing it more. I don't know why. It's not because I'm tired or whatever. I'm just enjoying coffee and I'm doing it, but I'll start looking at the clock and going, oh, it's 3 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock. So hit on that. On the amount, is there an issue with literally just the amount you have through the day, regardless of the time? And then a recommended time, past when you probably shouldn't. And I do want to pick on the people. There's always that one person who says, I know, man, I have caffeine at 10 o'clock. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah. And I was going to start off with them and the other people who can't do caffeine at all. So this is one of those things that's highly genetically related. Like we always pick on, if somebody's the melatonin in your skin, genetically, you're predisposed to a sunburn or not. And genetically, you are predisposed to being caffeine sensitive or not. And I think 23andMe and those things kind of will say, hey, you're more likely to be caffeine sensitive. You might be. I'm not. Well, I am in the evening. I won't drink it in the evening, but my time is, 3, 4 o'clock. I'll have an afternoon cup and kind of enjoy that sometimes. And so this one, people have to figure out on their own. But if somebody has sleep disturbance, I can't fall asleep, I can't stay asleep, and there's caffeine in your habit, it has to be looked at. You have to give yourself a time of no caffeine, which is really heinous.
Isn't it fair to question though, that even if you're that person who says, no, man, it doesn't bother me at all. I would say, I don't have faith that you can absolutely know unless you track it with a device like an Oura ring or something like that and track a couple of days of not doing it. And then
sure,
because you may not. So you
might not be realizing it's impacting your sleep. Right. And
I would say alcohol doesn't. I don't notice a big difference, but I get more. My tracker says more deep sleep when I don't.
That's right. And me too. And maybe I would find that out about in fact, I have been doing more caffeine lately and not getting a very good score. And maybe that is related. So I would have to then go without caffeine in the afternoon to notice that patterning. And I think that's a great point. And that's the value of those things, but it's also the pain in the butt of those things.
Yeah.
So if we go back over here to somebody who says, I am having a sleep problem that I perceive, then definitely take a look at caffeine. If you're the kind of person that you want human performance enhancement and to be becoming better, then track and be brave enough to go without that. To the guy who says, oh, I can drink caffeine all day long, it doesn't bother me. Well, prove it. Look a little deeper and prove it.
And if you feel like, I fall asleep, I stay asleep, but you get up and you're tired, there's a telltale sign. So again, we could talk about sleep overall, but caffeine. So is it fair to say, obviously, if you're one of those people who drinks an entire pot of coffee during the day and amps up with coffee, even if you don't have it late, could that be affecting your sleep?
I'm always going to say it does affect your sleep.
Okay.
Does it affect it enough for that guy to notice it or not?
So a caution. Same thing.
And on the other side, a caution, but also we have vilified caffeine or coffee, right? Like there is now the evidence and statistics and all that, but it does a heart good to read that some odd study in Brazil says that if you have 3 cups of coffee a day, you're actually going to live longer and happier.
Yeah, let's go with that one. But that one and the one that says that a glass of wine or
and
2,
a glass of wine,
yeah, and dark chocolate. And well, but again, is it fair to say? So if people are saying, okay, just tell me, would you tend to say for most people, you're best off, safest to not have it after 3, 4, 5, what?
Yeah, I'm going to say now, when we come to these conclusions, there's less science and a whole lot more personality.
Okay.
Kevin and Randy in our style, I would say.
Well, I'm going to listen to you because I trust you. So I'm asking.
I'm going to say enjoy your morning cup of coffee and don't feel bad about it. And then enjoy your early afternoon cup of coffee when grandma and grandpa are over to the house. And you're like, hey, would you guys like a cup of coffee? Kind of a thing, rather than, oh, it's time for my afternoon cup of coffee. That's how I kind of like, somebody will show up with coffee in the office in the afternoon. It's like, it's a delight.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Well, then I do want to throw out there to watch out for the, 8 o'clock, you're at the restaurant and I'll have a Coke, and it's a lot of caffeine and sugar if you're doing regular.
Yeah. And then caffeine in the night in America, where there's a sleep epidemic, and we've got 15 things impacting that sleep disturbance epidemic. Caffeine is by definition one of them. So why poke a hornet's nest? Just enjoy it earlier in the day and not later in the day.
Yeah. Next one, of course, it's a huge one, is food. And again, I want to put that, obviously the foods that you are sensitive to, that bother you, that could disrupt your digestion, keep you awake. And then, how much you eat, just overeating. And then again, how late.
Timing.
Yeah.
So can we leave off the type of food? Okay. So that's a whole different story, right? And let's just assume people are trying to eat well, whatever that means in their parlance. They're trying to eat well. And then the main things that hit people in the sleep world are reflux is a big one. So if they have the diagnosis of reflux, GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, or heartburn, or whatever they call it, we can go back over here to, well, what are you eating to lead to that? That's a different kind of story, but that's going to impact your sleep. And so definitely, if somebody is in the reflux kind of a place, I would say, okay, well, number one, you shouldn't be there. That's not normal. And if it's impacting your sleep, that's just another downstream domino. And we should talk about that. And then, but what to do about it specifically down the sleep kind of impacting pathway, I would say, is size of the meal and the timing of the meal. Okay. And so if we had to set up, and you always ask the question, well, how early should one eat? And I would say in general, and there are now developing studies that are looking at this, is to try to shoot for 3 hours to be done, to be empty, 3 hours empty before you're going to bed. And I fail on that one.
Me too.
Pretty much nightly.
We eat our meal plenty of time ahead of that. So I'll have my meal, try not to overeat, and I'll do that. But I'm generally going to snack, even if it's, on a good day, if it's 3 dark chocolate covered almonds or something. And on a bad day, it's, that and some, something salty for me, salty peanuts or whatever it is. But yeah,
I think a lot of us,
yeah.
And somebody saying, gosh, if I'm having trouble sleeping, is that impacting? The answer is yes. The question is to what degree. And so and then the size of it. And that's where because we're always, now in the season, sports happen late, we get home late, we eat big. And then
I was gonna say, is this somewhat of what's is it the French paradox or the European, thing where they eat? My daughter's getting ready to go over to France again, and they eat late, so late, 8, 9, 10, whatever. And
they eat big.
Overall, they're doing better than we are health wise. But again, we're looking for the broad brush paint stroke of what to be cautioned for. So if you want to be 100% safe, we're saying, watch your caffeine, watch how late, eat earlier, watch what you're eating as far as what's offensive to you.
Yeah. And the amount.
Yeah. Like for me, for some reason, popcorn, it will wreck my sleep.
Huh.
I don't know why, just know it. So so figuring out what it is, and then how late. And that's so hard with our TV culture, especially. That's when you want to.
But that's worth people's awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say liquids, but we talked about coffee. Before we look into liquid overall, the next one is culprit is probably alcohol, which, well, again, alcohol in general, period. How much? How late? And that's the one where we know it helps me go to sleep, right? But the surveys say that it then disrupts your level of sleep later.
That's right. We cannot say that is true for everybody all the time, but we could say pretty thoroughly across the board that alcohol will help you fall asleep, but it does not help you stay asleep or the quality of your middle sleep.
Yeah.
And so if somebody, and this is well, people like us, where you're in business and you're really stressed out and you want to, just relax in the evenings, and that habit starts to form. And then it's I'm waking up more tired, and then here comes more caffeine. And that tends to be the typical American habit. And over the course of decades of time, sure enough, you are disrupting this rhythm, this balance, that bangs up on that circadian rhythm kind of rhythm. Well, I keep saying rhythm because it's almost like a thing.
Yeah.
You
A
are
routine,
rhythmic.
a habit of whatever. So
And
our
alcohol
atomic,
disrupts it.
our atomic habits. Yeah. And I say that. So I have to look back. I feel like 15 years, I think longer, it seems like, where I have wine. I mean, I've been doing consistently. I don't know, probably not so much there, but in the last decade or so, there's few nights where I have not had a glass of wine or two. Right now, I'm within the longest span of not, and I'm at 2 months or so. I think I just passed 2 months of us not. Now I had, a camping trip where I had some and whatever, but for the most part, not. And my heart rate is lower. My resting heart rate is absolutely averaging lower.
Overnight, you mean?
Oh yeah, 24 hour. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the differentiating factor. So my resting heart rate is lower, and my deep sleep is more. I just can't deny it. And that sucks, because I would rather have 2-3 glasses of wine every night,
sleep,
and I'd rather have it be the last thing that I do before I brush my teeth, but I, choose what I want.
That's right. And I struggle in this area too, being really enjoying wine in the evenings. And I keep coming back to our friend from this morning, and he'll say, yeah, but you don't consume what you crave. You have become the person to crave what you consume.
Yeah.
But if it's impacting your sleep, recognize it and be an owner of your craving.
And this, I do want to throw in here. I mean, we're talking about this stuff and admitting our own appetites, that there is, I do sometimes I look at something and go, okay, is this best or not physically? So we're talking about sleep, for my performance, whatever. But would it be joyful for my soul?
Right.
And righteous there. But now, if I'm doing it, I need that joyful for my soul every single day. And I'm going to go back to cake and ice cream and wine and whatever.
If your soul plummets without it,
there you go. Would it,
right? Like if
celebratory or medicinally,
right?
Fair. Yeah.
If you're looking at the prospect of going on a different kind of a camping trip where you're with people who don't do that, and you're like, better not, and it's torture, then ask the question.
Well, I've had to look at that now. So I'm 2 months into this. We'd have a whole show probably on alcohol. 2 months into it, and I'm kind of past the, it's dinner time, and gosh, I miss it. I'm a little bit past that. I probably still think about it.
Oh, I mean, honestly, you always will.
Yeah.
Like, no different than I miss my mama's cooking from,
that's
however
true.
old I was. That's the joy and the soul connection. And it's not wrong or bad or immoral. But in our culture, like, so much of that is wrapped up around, mama's home cooking was sugar and cookies and all of these things that also have a harmful bent to them.
And this isn't this fair to say, just like caffeine, that it is absolutely going to affect some more than others? We were just with a friend of ours who's probably, I'm 165. How much do you weigh?
Yeah. 165. Yeah.
He's probably 280, something like that. Big dude, tall, big. And he talked about having this little, it was a hard root beer,
like 5% homemade root beer.
Yeah. 5% alcohol or whatever. And he says he's such a lightweight, so putting that in there as well, that one glass of wine at 7 wrecks somebody else, and it may not somebody else. And you got to figure
absolutely
it out.
Just like caffeine.
Okay.
Well, so be aware.
If we also talk about tea, there's lots of sleepy time teas as opposed to caffeine teas. You can talk about that if you want to, but then I did want to talk about, regardless of what the liquid is,
it's going in your bladder.
It's going in your bladder. And that I struggle with, because now my tendency is still, I'm not having wine. So I'm having seltzer with some lemon, whatever.
Do you get up at night? to go?
Lately, I've been just I'm sleeping a little deeper, I think, and I'm just withstanding it. I wake up in the morning and I got to go. I'm probably still not half the time, maybe 25% of the time I still have to get up and pee because I drank seltzer water. And
So about 25% of the time you're going to get up at about what time?
2, 1, 2.
And fall back asleep.
I fall right back generally, which we'll talk about that in a second. But generally I fall right back. Generally, sometimes my mind will start going.
So so a lot of people will say, oh, but I've always done that ever since I was little. And I get up once a night to go pee. And so the way I would approach this is it's by definition sleep disturbance, by definition, right? And so, but is it bad? Is it enough disturbance that you're going to not have refreshment when you wake up and you're not doing your normal sleep rhythm? And the most common time is going to be right around the 2 to 4 a.m. if somebody's going to bed around 10, right? And in the sleep physiology, we could call that the second half of night. Like you've gone through stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and now you're sort of on the second half, and there will be a snuffle, I call it, a rollover, a snort, and you're not conscious most of the time. But if you get up to go pee and you come right back to sleep, then I would tell people that's probably okay. That's not one of the things that I'm going to pound on as abnormal.
So, multiple sleep devices that I use or that I have used. And it was interesting looking at some of them, and I'll get up and pee and it won't register that I was awake. Sometimes it will.
Yeah.
And I thought that
just makes me mad at the device.
Well, okay. But I was just thinking there's sometimes when I stay pretty restful and sometimes when I really wake up that again, even the fact that you could wake up every night and is it fair to say you could wake up to pee every night and it's not just, I guess that's what you were saying. It's not super disturbing.
That's right. Others, you're barely disrupting your sleep cycle.
And for others, it really,
and for other people, it's a chasm.
Yeah.
Right. Of now I have to start the whole process. It's going to take an hour. So if it's a one time a night time, so nocturia, if it's one time a night and you wake up refreshed and all that, I'd say, okay, we'll leave that alone. But if somebody says, is it bad? I'm gonna say, well, it's not good, right? It's not helpful to wake up every night. And so then should Kevin Miller change his drinking habits in order to avoid that? I would say, well, be aware.
Yeah.
And
I am cognizant and I'm trying not to, that's my goal is to not get up and pee.
Okay. But we are also 50s, and this is the age of BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy, where, in America, the prostate tends to get larger and nocturia tends to be one of the problems. And so a lot of people hearing this will say, well, yeah, now I'm waking up twice a night, 3 times a night. And I would say, okay, this will wreck your sleep eventually. And so here we are in the epidemic of not necessarily insomnia, but sleep disturbance, and our prostates it's not prostrate, everybody. So it's just prostate.
Lying prostrate on the ground, prostate on the ground.
And is involved. It's involved. So if people are saying, yeah, I'm getting up at night and it's really bothering me, then we will say, okay, you're just going to have to draw the line of no liquids. Generally, the first line is after dinner. And you need, if you're going to be done with dinner by 6 or 7, that's the end of all liquids. And I think that's a reasonable line to draw. You still stay hydrated, so you're drinking more earlier. And people need to know it takes about 30 days at least to transition that. So you have to make the change for 30 days at least before you're going to say, okay, that helped me to not pee at night. The rhythm has to change there. And most people, they'll say, oh yeah, I can totally tell a difference. So then we're back to, well, what about sleepy time and these other kind of things? And I love tea, and I would sip on those things at night, kind of a thing, and generally don't wake up at all. And would counsel, yes, that would be a reasonable thing that you can do that would help. There's lots of teas that can help down that pathway. And I do think that's a good thing if it's not triggering a nighttime urination.
Yeah, we do have sleepy time tea. I don't do it, but sometimes the kids will do it for stuff. Well, so let's go next. Here's another, you talk about meds, and should we put in there pharma meds, and supplements as well? Because melatonin's, is that a supplement?
Famous supplement? Yeah,
that's not a med, but let's put that in there. So, well, let's start that with that melatonin. That's gotten to be such a popular. I was gonna say a fad, but I mean, it's
No,
popular. Is that
I mean, it's so if somebody says, okay, I'm having trouble sleeping, let me take something, which is what every American at some point is going to think. Is it good, bad, right, wrong? And I would say, well, I mean, we didn't order these things in any particular order, but if somebody is reaching for melatonin before recognizing alcohol and all these other things, I'd say you're trying to game the system.
well, as you say, a nutritional supplement is supplemental, meaning it's supplementing something that we
Are missing,
we're
or
missing. Yeah.
right. You're not giving your body what it needs to make its own
Yeah.
melatonin, right? Your lack of
Right.
sleep is not because you have a deficiency of melatonin. You might have a deficiency of melatonin production because you're not exercising, your sleep schedule's all whacked, you're too stressed out, you're not hydrated, and whatever other reasons. Those are the foundations of sleep that we all take for granted. Is it wrong to take melatonin? No, but the more melatonin that you take, the more you're becoming the kind of person who has to take melatonin if you don't address the other reasons.
Yeah.
And that's so down the supplemental pathway, there's lots of these things, L-theanine, and now I won't be able to think of any, but there's lots of sleep formulas, GABA, and all of these.
Which to that degree is not any different than sleepy time tea. We're talking about an herb or a vitamin.
Well, no, I mean, an herb is chamomile is sleepy time. So an herb theoretically is going to stimulate the exact thing that we're talking about here of your body's production of melatonin or GABA or 5-HTP. Or do you just go take 5-HTP and GABA and whatever else? And you can, and it helps a lot of people. And we've certainly seen that. But no, we say this all the time. Whatever medicine or supplement that you take, how do you eat, live, think, breathe, and do all these other things to give your body what it needs to not need that? And you might be successful, you might not. And some people might take, melatonin every night for the next 50 years. Okay, that's not wrong.
Not some side effect to that. And I got to bring up too, because I've heard people talk. We all have our things, man. And if you do sleepy time tea and sleep, and you are vibrant and awesome, great. I would tend to say the same thing. If you take melatonin and feel like it's what gives you this, it's the holy grail of your sleep, knock yourself out. Because then we can come into, and we did a show on the placebo effect, and whether it's helping or not, in and of itself, or if it's just a placebo and it's just part of your routine, which we're going to talk about in a second. Great.
There's a mootness there.
Yeah.
And then, if somebody comes to me though and says, I don't like having to take this, I want to get off.
Right. And I just assume not have to be dependent on it. So I'm grateful that I don't need any of it.
And then I would caution you to say, well, make sure you understand, don't take sleep for granted.
Yeah.
Right. Like understand your relationship to food and timing and rhythm and alcohol and all these other kind of things, because sleep is a mysterious gift. It's a complex.
It is weird. Sometimes I think about I'm gonna lay here and go unconscious. That's the
right.
Weirdest
it
thing.
is the kind of the weirdest thing. And so I've shifted my thinking to thinking about it as the gift of Sabbath every day. It's a sabbatical. It's a reset. Now we know on the physiology side of sleep, it is the most inflammation resolving thing that you do.
Well, I don't know if you remember, we did the show and I was trying to hit you on the holy grail of if you can only have one thing, if you can only eat well, if you can only exercise, if you can only sleep, if you can only meditate, whatever. And you kind of surprisingly came to, man, if you had to pick, sleep.
I would still stay there.
I am since then. I think about that.
But your initial reaction was, well, dang, how boring.
I know, because I'd rather not. I would not. I'd just rather not.
I'd rather produce and take some awesome, thing.
Person comes up with a pill and I don't have to sleep.
You would be horrific.
I think.
Okay. Meaning we all would.
I know.
It would be the definition of hell.
All right, you ready to move? So there, just a real quick, obviously with pharmaceuticals, I'm going to say, man, we've talked about pharmaceuticals, whether we're talking about blood pressure medications and what did we talk about just recently? I mean,
but let me go in because Ambien, Lunesta, Sonata, I mean, there's, a list of those. And they're cringy.
They scare me.
I was gonna say. Because And he just yesterday had a conversation with this woman. She's like, I have been on this thing for 5 years every day. I am just not going to come off. And I'll be like, yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult to come off. Do you want to do the time and the effort and the energy and the work? And she's like, I'm sleeping wonderfully. Like, okay, we can stay here.
And most of those do have some side effects though, don't they?
Many of them do. And she might be having those side effects and is not perceiving them, is one of the risks. And here's the other risk, is that there is likely to come a day when it doesn't work anymore. And now you're that much further away from quote unquote normal sleep that is kind of generated from within yourself. And then it's pill hopping and pill chasing and solution chasing. And it's just really frustrating. And so, but we use Ambien all the time. It's a tool because
Ambien sleep. You mentioned Benadryl and
yeah. And for people that are at home and they're doing the over-the-counter Unisom and Benadryl and Tylenol PM and all these other kind of things, I'd say be careful. You are training your brain to need a pill to go to sleep. It's not morally wrong. It's not bad. But if you want to be becoming the kind of person dependent on pills, you are. That's what you're becoming. If you want to be becoming the kind of person who is becoming less dependent on that pill, then what's the time and effort and energy and vulnerability investment into becoming that person? That's kind of what we're talking about today. Be aware of all these 20 different things that everybody takes for granted and recognize that your sleep is an accomplishment. You ascend into sleep. You don't fall asleep. It's not just the last kerchunk at the end of the day of nothingness. It's a complex interplay between neurotransmitters and hormones and peacefulness and all of these things. And then you ascend into a sleep state rather than descend into unconsciousness.
Okay.
You are ascending into a different state of consciousness where memories are consolidated, inflammation is resolved, the brain actually gets cleaned out. It's an amazing thing, you know, and that's true of all of the body, right? Like we can go down the amazing pathway, the microbiome, and you know, poop isn't just poop, and sleep isn't just turning the lights off. And it's just, so if people can have that awareness, and then I'm like, and you're going to prepare your brain for that by watching 2 hours of war with ice cream. And me too. Like, this is what I do.
I know.
Just don't be surprised when sleep evades you.
Well, and ultimately we're looking at the manifestation of it. How are you in the morning when you wake up and through the day? Do you have energy? I mean, it's feels like the number one issue out.
Can I just go through the questions I asked everybody when you come in? I'm gonna look you in the eye and say, okay, here's our sleep questions. Do you sleep well? Do you feel just,
yeah.
Okay. Do you fall asleep? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you stay asleep every night? 25% of the time you don't. You wake up to pee.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you fall back asleep easy? Usually. Most of the time?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you wake up refreshed?
Yeah.
How many hours of sleep do you average?
Not quite 8 lately.
Pretty close. Good, right? Yeah. Most people are telling me 6 and a half, 7. And if you wake up refreshed, and a lot of people are like, I could sleep 10. And I wake up 22-year-old this week. So I wake up like a truck like I've been in battle. I wake up tireder than when I went to sleep.
That grieves me.
Yeah, it aches. And then he's literally said, it takes me 90 minutes to get ready for the day. Oh. Coffee, time, slogging through the brain fog. Okay. Do you hit a wall in the afternoon?
Rarely.
How often?
Not once a week. It's a couple times a month.
Okay. Which I would call more often than I thought you would say. Do you find yourself desiring a nap?
No, not usually, though. I have, especially lately, I've had some days of just significant exercise and output, and I'll come back and I'm doing a show, and afterwards I'll literally just lay down and go, oh my gosh, because I've done some, but I'm talking like race effort.
Yeah, I would say that doesn't count.
That's normal with race effort. So otherwise, no.
And if people are hearing that and they're saying, oh yeah, then, even though you might be still going to work every day and getting the job done every day, you are running out of sleep energy, so to speak.
And your productivity, that's what bothers me. So I'm going to eat lunch. And that's when we eat lunch. And that's what we think of in America. We eat lunch, it goes in there, man. Now your body's got to deal with it. You get tired afterwards. And I don't want to spend the time being tired. I want my productivity. And I think even if I have a big lunch, my body should be able to deal with that. And I still have energy on top of that. So if it's taxing me, something feels wrong.
And you're correlating that to lunch. And I would say,
I was doing that from a cultural, I think we had that cultural, you had a big lunch, so I'm tired. And
part of that is you should not be. So I think we've talked about everything. The relationship with food and energy, but also your afternoon bunk and sleep and the hormone balancing. And then the other question is, okay, well, then do you feel this second wind? Like along comes 8 or 9 o'clock and it's like, dang, I am ready to produce now. But at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I just needed a nap.
I never have that.
Well, me either.
8 or 9 o'clock, man, I'm getting ready for sleeping.
That's great. That's the way it should be. But many people are not that way. And they're like, yeah, I have this second wind. And some people are like, if I don't hit my sleep window by 9 o'clock and it's 10 or 10:30, I won't get sleep till 2 or 3 because I have this rebound effect. And that's part of the sleep disturbance epidemic that we are in America. And I want people to understand that you didn't just wake up and catch this, right? Like it's a culmination of all of these things that we're talking about over time, the rhythm and the habit, but there's patterns. And in some of those patterns, we would say, holy cow, let's use the gift of Ambien because we got to force a sleep repatterning. But at any time I start somebody off on Ambien that hasn't come to me, on 5 years of Ambien, it's like, hey, in 30 days, we're going to stop. But everybody does it wrong. And everybody out there listening to this, they say, oh yeah, I only use that when I'm really tired. That's not the right way to use it. It's if you, number one, don't get really tired, and change the underlying foundation. But then when your sleep cycle is off, we're going to change the sleep hygiene or the patterns. And we're going to use the Ambien or even the melatonin for 30 days to reset the pattern and then have an exit strategy.
And then the question, if you're not getting tired, why? Well, let's keep going. You mentioned TV. So we have screens and there's the issue of generally when you and I are talking about screens, it's just, how close to bed are you watching screens? Are you blue light, whatever? But then you also mentioned or referenced, what are you watching? So if I'm watching a, nice, stimulating, slow, Hallmark, sweet thing or whatever, or am I watching something that has me on the edge of my seat and I'm in anxiety? I do that, because you got me reading fiction books again. And I found every once in a while, I'll be there doing my little nighttime ritual and I'm reading a book and realize, oh my gosh, I'm excited. It's something exciting. It's not what I want to do now. I need a chill book.
This also touches on kind of the spiritual component of what's your mindset and your heart set as you close your eyes and snuggle into that pillow. What's the last thoughts of the day? So,
it's always convicting to me to sometimes wake up in the morning with a song in my head. And I'll realize that may have been the last song that I heard. And I think it's been
playing
going on in my head all night long. And I woke up and here's this song. What are those lyrics even saying? But just more so, what good could I be putting in that's playing?
And, people have heard about people listening to tapes or whatever at night of these messages. And is there concreteness to say, if you do that, it equals this over here? And I would say there is nothing in the sleep world is concrete. It's this mysterious thing.
We're hypothesizing towards optimal, like best chance.
And that's where, you're the Hallmark guy. I'm kind of the Hacksaw Ridge guy. Just kidding.
Thanks.
But and both of us are doing the books and that's right. Recently I'm in a good book and it's just, get to the next chapter kind of a thing. And I've been conscientious of that because there's also the point where I'm like, oh, my eyes just closed a little bit longer there. And like, okay, now I'm ready. I do too. It's like a great signal. And I close the book and in general, fall asleep pretty fast. And in general, I have trained in a conscientious, here's my last thought. of gratitude, of gratefulness, of thank you, God, I don't really linger on what happened in the book. It's the deep breath. But that's not natural. And I think people need to be conscientious of that and flip a switch and say, I'm going to think about XYZ. Obvious, again, you don't have total control over that, but it's worth the awareness and the effort down that pathway versus the tempting habit of, I'll just look at my phone one more time. Is there any news? Did I get a text? I've already parked that thing hours away, and people are going to develop their own.
We have too much of a list to try to get through here right now to go off on tangents, but I do realize that so much of this, our great grandparents did not deal with before electricity. We're talking about the dawn of electricity, because the greatest span of humanity, the sun went down and you had no light. You put a candle on or an oil lamp for a little bit, and then you go to sleep. This is all stuff, so much of it that we're talking about, even the food we have available, that's available since electricity, not that long ago, that we don't have to abide by. Well, we're going to get to even circadian rhythm here. So again, screens, I mean, you generally, again, if we're going to paint with a broad brush, you would say no screens,
minimum an hour,
no screens. So that means you're not looking at your phone and the blue light.
Your phone is done. Your Kindle's done. Your iPad's done. Your laptop's done, and your TV's done.
Yeah. Is it fair to say, even if you don't get hung up on blue light, even if you're doing yellow light or whatever, it still feels like it's an anxiety possibility.
It's a stimulating trigger.
It's stimulating.
Yeah, light stimulates.
Yeah,
just blue, red, yellow, green. Light stimulates. Blue more than others. And do you need $100 pair of glasses to wear from 5 p.m. on? And I'd say, well, if you're a super insomniac, yeah.
What do you do if you're a Kindle person? You do your book there. Is that?
I just encourage people, there's two kinds of Kindles. There's the ones where you need a backlight, like it's a book, the Whisper or something or other. And then there's the Kindle Fire, which is like an iPad. It's generating light.
All right.
One generates. So anything that's generating light is where I'd say, hey, try to begin your bedtime process, which might mean take a shower and brush teeth or go, for us, it's kids and the bedtime routine, and we're away from screens. And then I'm kind of, folding laundry or whatever. And then is the crawl into bed, I get my book, and then the process has started. And that process, the rhythm and the circadian and all those signals, light disrupts. Even your ambient light in the room. Some people are so super sensitive, they do have to go and buy night lights of red light.
Oh, really?
So 0 yellow, green,
my favorite, I have a bedside lamp. My favorite thing though, is I have it's like a bookmark night light thing. It's a book reading light. Yeah. And it's
just right there on your book.
And I just like it.
Yeah.
It just gives me peace.
Yeah. The rest of the room is dark.
Yeah.
And me too. My wife bought some new nightlight kind of by the side things, and the brightness was a little more, a little less. And I just noticed, I like it when I get sleepier faster if there's less light.
Yeah.
And that is probably true. And it'll probably be even more if you read by red light.
I've not even looked at that.
I've never tried that either.
Huh. Okay. Well, screens, obviously what you watch, is it causing you anxiety or giving you peace and whatnot? Here's another one. Just light in general.
Ambient light. So, and this one I would just say, get your phone out of the room.
Oh yeah.
Now baby monitors are baby monitors, but if you can get one without any light on it, that's great.
Oh, we're constantly, any device like
devices.
That. Yeah. We use sound machines, or that's about the only thing we have, but I'm right away taking a piece of electrical tape and sticking it over the stupid little light.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going into hotels. I hate that.
Yeah.
There's a, fire extinguisher or what is it? Smoke alarm and
the exit sign.
If there's a microwave or whatever.
Yeah. My wife is also very sensitive, and we'll do a VRBO. And one of the things, she wants to hunt all the pictures to see if there's blinds on the bedroom windows.
Huh, yeah.
Because if there's not, and we were in Florida this most recent time, and one of the rooms, in fact, 2 of the recent trips, there was no blind. And so we have to go hunting through the house for sheets or something like that and pin them up. And So I would just say, yes, pay attention that if you can, some people use the eye shields and stuff like
Right.
that darkness, we'll flip it around. Light means something to your body.
Mhm.
We could do a whole show on light, the nanometers and infrared sauna and all those kind of things. It means something to the body. And if your body is over here a little bit imbalanced because of your stress and your alcohol and lack of exercise and yada, yada, then light is going to enter that system and be a little bit more imbalancing. And in some people, that's going to impact fall asleep, stay asleep. So be aware. If you're one of those people, then go to the extra mile to get blackout shades, get all the ambient light. Like years ago, we looked at, and there's like 8 lights in there with her phone, my phone, her clock, my clock. Back then it was baby monitor. And I was like, holy cow. And, since then the phones have been out for a long time and all of those things. And it's not like we could tell, oh yeah, that made a big difference in our sleep, but we didn't let it get bad enough so that we could tell. So for people and for you're raising your kids, just train the less light as possible.
Yeah. Which I don't like pitch black. I sleep better, but for some reason I don't like it. But I've just realized.
Well, you don't like it because you have to get up to pee.
Yeah. Well, true. Okay. All right. All right. Let's see. Sound. That's another one. Obviously, is sound. And those who live in New York City and there's sirens going by and whatnot. For us, I never did sound because I always lived like I do now out in the country, quiet and stuff. But then you get kids and you get, teenagers up at night, and heck, if the wind's blowing or we've had to close our window because the elk are bugling or whatnot, but we generally use a sound machine.
We do too. Okay. For the last 10 years, we have a fan because we don't have an air conditioner. And
now if I'm by myself camping out in the woods, especially if I'm just doing car camping, I'm in my van or something like that, I love the absolute silence. I love it, but that's rare. It's hard to get.
I don't like it anymore because like in a tent, I hear the sleeping bag rustling and absolute silence is a little hard for me now. And there is also now did you know that there's white noise and now there's pink noise and now there's brown noise and some other kind of noises.
Brown noise sounds stinky.
I like the brown noise the best. It's kind of like a muffled white noise. And
well, I'm joking. I think that's what we use now. I think we went from white to brown. I think my wife does brown now.
I don't know this literature, but pink, and people are now conjecturing, okay, since we have all these sleep monitors, which noise is the best, which one contributes to better sleep. And so and some people are going to be brown and some are white, and some are pink and some are whatever.
When we first got them, they had, you get rain, thunderstorm, beach, whatever. And if it's any variation, I don't like it. But
right. And so some people hear the variation, some people, the variation, because pink noise has variation in it, but it's subtle. So it's kind of signaling into, the head, the ears through that lens of, is this noise or information? What's next?
No, I want to skip that. We'll come back to just your routine overall, but let's just say the bedroom. And I've heard so much about keeping the bedroom, I'm going to call it sacred to a point, meaning it's where you sleep. Your mind is programmed to where you sleep. It's not where you cook. It's not where you eat. It's not where you watch TV, is what I've read. I mean, some people do it. Maybe it's
we can say this is a medical dictum. The bed is for sleep and sex, right? That's it. So if somebody is saying, yeah, I can't fall asleep, I would give it, like for me, I'd give it 20, 30 minutes. And that's the recommendation, 20, 30 minutes, 30 minutes at the outside, and then get up and go read. Don't go eat. Don't go turn on, screen light, but go out into the living room or whatever and read for 30 minutes and then try again. Don't create a connection to your brain where a bed is where you lay down and don't sleep.
I've heard that, and I don't have the issue that much, but
right. Just don't lay there and lay there and lay there.
So if you're doing the insomnia, which we'll talk about in a second, but if you're doing that, don't get up
and start the cycle all over again.
Don't get up and stimulate.
Correct. Yeah. And famously people would go and eat. Well, eat and TV. That's all people do. And then they read. But if you eat and go to the TV, then you stay up. Like, don't try to go back to sleep, because even if you did fall back asleep, I guarantee you that the next night is going to be another problem. You are now training poor sleep habits.
It's interesting. We built a house that's big. It's almost 5,000 square feet. Our bedroom is not that big. I don't know why. If I built it again, I built it bigger, but with my big custom king size bed that I built in there, there's not a ton of room. We don't do anything in there. I mean, I dress, of course, there's a bathroom in there, and I sleep. And I like that. I do like that. It's like when I sit in my car, I'm in the car. I'm in there to go somewhere. And when I when I walk in my bedroom, I'm either there for an article of clothing, but generally I'm there just to go to sleep. So I like that programming.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
Yeah,
we're the opposite of you, where our bedroom is instantaneously to the kitchen.
Yeah, but it's still fairly small. It's not some huge thing.
There's no sitting room. There's no
TV in there.
No TV.
Yeah.
And the only thing we do in there is, dress, shower, and sleep.
Yeah.
Which is the way it should be.
Well, and along with this, even having that, I had a thought of, does the sleep, so I think about this with my kids specifically, does it feel safe? Is it a safe, warm, inviting?
You said sacred, and I would say, is it sanctuarial?
Yeah. So is it a place where you feel safe, non-threatened? And, I know a lot of people, you're in a high rise in Manhattan and stuff, but you should still do things. What are things that you can do? So it is a psychologically safe, inviting, welcoming. I have a little girl up in a bunk bed, and it's like a cocoon.
I was going to say a nest.
Yeah.
This is nesting.
Yeah.
And both of my kids too are, there's the bunk bed thing, and they're like, it's a cocoon. They've got pillows and blankets and animals, and they bury, and they've got their little bitty night light. And I love, and I was wrestling with one of them on the underside the other day. I'm like, this is really cool down here. It's your own little world. And he's like, I know.
We have one like that too. Yeah. Well, let's go to the routine schedule. You mentioned, I think you even said circadian rhythm, which we got to go back to the before electricity, especially.
I was going to say, so this is a big deal. And it's if anybody wants, if you Google circadian rhythm, and so I think 2014, 15, 16, somewhere around in there, the discoverers and the characterizer, we've known about circadian rhythm for a long time, but then in the little 80s, 90s, zeros, the science guys that said, yeah, you only thought you knew about circadian. So these guys got the Nobel. And if you said, how I always tease you, if you begin the phrase of, is this related to that within the body? The answer is always yes. Everything's related to everything. And if you started to say, is this related to circadian, or does the circadian rhythm impact this? The answer is yes. Does the circadian rhythm does that impact my microbiome?
Give a layman's definition of circadian rhythm.
Oh gosh. Yeah, let's go to Google here, because I don't even know that I have a science definition.
Well, it's saying a 24-hour cycle. And so layman's term, and I think it's circadian rhythm, back with the Native Americans, let's say, okay, which I have in my home, Native Americans, that the sun goes down, you have a fire, and I don't know if they did candles or whatever, but then you go to sleep under the stars or under your teepee or whatever. And then the sun gets up in the morning, or the birds start chirping before the sun comes up. So in the summertime, we have the window open, man. I hear the birds before the sun comes up. And that's when I, can wake up if I'm doing things naturally. Now, again, if you kept the lights on and stayed up till 2, you're not going to naturally do that. But then is there I guess what we're saying, one is we know that routine matters. So even if you're on the graveyard shift, you're not following this circadian rhythm, we know that you're best off to go to sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time.
True. That we know that.
If you're doing super chaotic stuff, that is harder on your body, harder on your sleep, harder on your quality of sleep. So we know that. So I would say, first off, at least try to do that. Now, again, we're talking optimal. So if you're graveyard shift, you can't do this, that's okay. But optimal, I mean, if I wanted to do absolute optimal for Kevin Miller, I would go to sleep around when the sun's going down or not too long after. And I would wake up, really, again, the birds start chirping before the sun comes up. And that's what I would do. To me, that's the layman's thought of circadian rhythm. So the closer I can get to that right now, and right now I'm not too bad. Right now, the sun is up late. It gets dark at what? It seems like it's late, 8:30,
Mm-hmm.
9, whatever. And if I'm going to bed 9:30 or 10, that's not too bad, even 10:30, and then waking up at 5, 6, whatever time, not too far off. So even to look at that, how far off? So you know, it may
You're
be
not too
perfect.
far off in the summertime.
That's true.
I mean,
That's true.
wintertime on the northern latitudes is the thing. So we went to Wikipedia and there's a picture there, and the amazing thing is that this circadian rhythm is related to blood pressure, related to your bowel movements, related to the rhythms of the body.
Mhm.
And it's kind of the epigenetics, like this is connected to the electromagnetic field of the earth. This is where things get really bizarre, that as human beings who just turn the lights on and turn them off, go to bed or go to work or whatever, we don't know the environment or the impact of the environment that we're living in.
Mhm.
So to optimize that, I would say, well, you don't have to go read the Nobel laureate, yada, yada, 20 years of research that went into this. We're back to the boring, you just go to bed on time and turn the lights off. And
well, and I was thinking of animals. So we live out in the woods, you know, and there's the deer and the antelope play and the bear and the elk and the birds and whatnot. And I know we're a higher evolved, you know, creature, but I would like to have their health. Just like you said, I always come back to that. When's the last time that I saw one of the elk lagging behind on an oxygen machine and a walker,
right.
and not they're going strong until boom, their time is up. I want to have that health. They also go to sleep and wake up at the same time, you know, every day. And you know, again, we can't be perfect, but the closer we can get to that, the better off we're going to be.
That's where I've become more enamored, and I don't know what the right, just in the clinic, I have to only say this actually to mature, and by mature, I mean people that understand the goals of functional, understand well-being.
Yeah.
To a typical, even very smart, intelligent person in America who does not understand what well-being is, I wouldn't say this. But if to those who have ears to hear, I would say your life, including the environment that you live in, is your medicine. Your circadian rhythm, your sleep, your connection to the basics, which is the foundation, which is I'm going to say the 95% of what contributes to wellness is these things. And sleep is one of them. Yeah. And vice versa. If you don't sleep well, that's 95% of your poison. And we as a smart, intelligent people hate that because it sounds...
We're killing it because our appetites want what we want. I want to stay up and I want ice cream.
I'm a modern American and I can afford these things, and doggone it, this is modern.
Yep.
Progress.
And I can have whatever I want to eat, and there's always a new show. So I can always watch something or a YouTube video.
Always. And even old shows.
Yeah.
Darn it.
Exactly. You know, one thing that I skipped over here too were we talked about sound machines and stuff like that, is mattress.
Oh yeah.
Pillow and blanket. I mean, my gosh, we see so many, you know, get the Tempur-Pedic super duper deluxe mattress that levitates and whatever, and it'll cure all your sleep things, or get this custom what do they call it?
Hypoallergenic,
whatever pillow with this kind of form that does this to your neck. And blankets lately, I've seen a lot on weighted blankets. And so thoughts there. I mean, I don't know. I'm on a good mattress. I'm on a brand new, it was an advertiser, Bolster Sleep mattress. I'm on it. It seems awesome. I like it. I used to use a custom pillow with neck stuff. Now I just use some big kind of heavy pillow and blankets.
My little 10-year-old came home the other day and he's like, Dad, do you sleep on purple?
Oh, that's a mattress company. Right.
I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, if you don't sleep on purple, he's a walking average. Like, what are you watching? And so, okay. So there's the skeptical side of, I mean, my gosh, you know, how many thousands of years did we sleep on a rock?
Well, I'm thinking about the Asians on their little
rice pillows,
reed mat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Chosen. You got me. We're watching Chosen.
The series. And they're out in the woods.
Well, they had the Jesus character in a tent, and he just kind of lays down on his side with, it looked like near nothing on
a rock.
Yeah.
And so here we are again, trying to complicate matters and that kind of thing. But I've had multiple people come back and say, that the weighted blanket changed their life.
Hmm.
We know now in autism, so over here on the autistic spectrum, that these weightedness, did we talk about that? The Temple Grandin story of autistic child got stuck in one of the cattle chutes. They were a farming, ranching family, and this, I don't know, 10-year-old, but autistic, kind of debilitated, was following mom around or whatever. And something happened. And when the child got stuck and couldn't move, she got better, which led to these techniques of, well, let's not go down that rabbit hole. People like the cocooning. We just talked about that cocooning.
Well, I know it from infancy. You swaddle.
Yeah. Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they're in the womb, they're all curled up.
And so there's something, and here again, we're in the mystery of why in some person can you use a weighted blanket and it clicks them into a deeper, better, some odd kind of a sleep.
Man, right now it's summer. We have the window open. We're on the second floor. And a lot of times I just have a sheet.
But do you ever sleep with nothing?
No.
Can't
hardly do it.
Cannot do it. Like that feels.
I mean, if I'm in Texas in the summer and it's no air conditioning or whatever, maybe just out of survival, but it's not comfortable.
But even then I want something. Get a fan on me and then put a blanket or a sheet,
a screen, anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so, okay. So we can all say, yeah, me too. What is that we need, that cocoon or whatever. And then maybe somebody else feels the weightedness of that. Another one is the chili pad, or that's the one company I know, the temperature. And you don't have an Oura Ring, but one of the things that the Oura Ring measures is temperature. And so here we are again, the complexity of sleep, to say, like, I think this was Matthew Walker who said, okay, like a lot of people have cold hands, cold feet.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah,
you told me this. Yeah.
You typically, it's very hard to fall asleep if your feet are cold or your hands are cold,
which I struggle with. I'm a cold hand.
Me too. Sometime I, like on a rare occasion, I'll get up and get them warm water going and then run back to bed. Right. Like just get them warm to break that cycle. Cause if I don't, I know it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
Okay. And my wife, wintertime, she'll come into bed with socks, and then a few minutes later, she'll have to take them off. So you typically
It's just funny. We should get into sleep fetishes like that. Like my wife wears socks, but will often have her feet sticking out of the covers. No socks. And if my feet are sticking out, monsters are going to eat them.
Yeah, that's right.
So they got to be tucked in like military at the bottom of the bed.
Do you remember that movie from like the 60s where the twins and they poured honey on the girls' feet and the bears came and licked them? No. That gives me like heebie-jeebie nightmares.
And I'm not sleeping. That would be another one, is curing nighttime phobias.
Phobias, right. Bears licking my toes.
Okay.
But anyway, the mattress, and here I think it matters. Your pillow matters. Mindset matters. Choosing to hate your pillow. Going to bed saying, "Oh my gosh, I hate my pillow." No, it just.
But can you land anywhere on?
A lot of it is habit, mindset, habit. Like if right now you and I went camping or whatever, you know how the first night of camping is just terrible.
Yes.
But by 2 or 3, you're like better.
It's better.
Typically,
still bad.
It's still bad, but and we did one where 4 or 5 nights in, you're like, son of a gun, if I'm not sleeping. And remember Crocodile Dundee, right, in the hotel room, and he
right.
He had to, make a pallet on the floor, kind of a thing.
I slept for months on the roof of a house in Tucson, Arizona. I was living there. We were cycling, training in the winter, and I slept on the roof that have flat roofs out there. So a buddy of mine, there wasn't room inside the house really. We moved in with a bunch of guys, slept up there for months. And when I went back to my parents' house, got in the bed, and I then scooted out and went on the floor. So I experienced that to some degree. Point being, well, but that comes back to the question of, should people be out there fretting about their mattress? Do I need a $2,000 Tempur-Pedic, adjustable, temperature adjusted?
Right. I don't know. And at the same time, we have a Tempur-Pedic, and it really helped my wife.
Do you?
Yeah.
But like the temperature thing, I worry. Obviously, if you've got the temperature fairly reasonable in the room,
your body should adjust.
I was going to say, shouldn't your body? And somebody's going to say menopause and hot flashes,
thyroid, all of these. Yep, absolutely. So what has been the information going into your hormones for the last 50 years is going to impact your current sleep status through hormones and thyroid and leptin and all of those things. And so people they're not going to reverse the physiologic trend by getting a $5,000 mattress. I have a patient, I was just speaking of mattresses, and she went and she needs to be super duper hypoallergenic. And so I'll just cut to the chase. Have you ever heard of a horsehair mattress?
No.
So it's like from back in the 1800s, if you have horses, you can collect their hair as you brush them and all this, and they would make a mattress.
Okay.
Do you know how you can buy them? Guess the cost.
It's probably stupid. What?
$110,000.
Oh, come on.
I Googled it. Google doesn't lie. Come on.
Okay.
$110,000 for a hypoallergenic horsehair mattress. So people are looking for craziness out here.
My dream is just somebody to give me a foot rub to go to sleep. That's way less than
that's way less. Yeah.
Okay.
We were in Japan, and I enjoyed the tatami mats, those squishy mat kind of things that with the rice pillows, the simplicity. I thought, this might.
Do you remember back with water beds?
Yes, I hated those.
I did too. I mean, but again, whatever you sleep.
And notice how they're gone.
Well,
nobody's doing water beds.
I did notice that, but I mean, these days it feels like, man, we're not given any prescription here.
No.
Should it be firmer? Should it be softer? Should you use a pillow that
cradles your neck and does the angles?
Neck?
And
I mean, to that degree, I'd say test it, and whatever does it, whatever works, knock yourself out. You mentioned temperature of the mattress. Some people question the temperature of the room. Should you keep it below 70? Should you do whatever? Feels like, again, I don't know, whatever
I would say cool is better.
We
know that.
Yeah. It seems like cooler is better, but if you live in Austin, Texas, and you can't afford air conditioning, get a fan, do the best you can, but it seems like
cool. Yeah. Cool is better if you can.
Exercise.
And by the way, it's those Austin people where the chili pad might even be a better economic suggestion.
That's true. I thought
right.
About that.
Okay. So it's not aimed at, living in the Rockies.
Exercise is next. I don't know why we left it this long, because to me, I don't know anything else. I wonder if it may be, I felt like it's maybe the number one thing that helps me is I'm almost every day, I'm doing.
I used to say that. I used to say, what's the number one medicine for sleep? Good exercise, consistent rhythm. What's the number one thing that's going to help you exercise? Good sleep, restful, rhythmic. And these days, I would not be quite so, belligerent on that point, but I would say it's in the top 5. And you're doing great. I'm doing terrible down the consistency of the rhythm of exercise kind of things. And it's not that, oh my gosh, I didn't exercise for, 5-6 days in a row and then my sleep crashes. It's if I become the kind of guy that has, that it's 5-6 weeks in a row that my exercise goes in a way, then I'm putting my sleep in danger.
Yeah.
And if my sleep gets in danger and I don't have good sleep, then exercise is actually going farther and farther away from me, because now I'm going to be tired. And so many people listening to us now in their, adult years are saying, gosh, I just can't turn the corner. And it's like, well, do you go and force exercise if you're tired, or do you force better sleep in order then to exercise? And I would say yes to both. Which, for one person, it's going to be one emphasis, and for the other one, the other emphasis. But we have to mention here, if you are pathologically overtired, so if there is the adrenal fatigue and those kind of things, we're not saying push the exercise.
I was going to say, now you're talking moderate. So I'm going out and killing myself, but I'm living a lifestyle to try to bolster that and to be able to recover from that. Well, right now I knew I caught something. I had a couple kids sick, and I got,
and one of the reasons was
I really pushed it for days in a row, over and over and over. I was doing long runs, but I think it was yesterday, I brought my bike here. I was going to go for a ride, and then I'm fighting this. And I thought, no, I want over this. And I didn't go out. I walked for a mile, slow.
Yeah.
To judge where you are. So if you're saying, gosh, to help my sleep, I need to go exercise, audit your energy levels, where you think you are recovery wise, and you may not need to go ballistic for at all, do something moderate. Get your heart rate. I think can we say the point is try to get your heart rate up for a little bit. And the age old thing is, 20 minutes, go for a brisk walk. Is that fair?
I mean, we're not going to say, is it heart rate or go do some push-ups?
All right.
It is part of the mystery of, again, everybody knows what exercise is, but nobody knows the complexity of its relationship to your circadian rhythm and sleep.
Here's an analogy. This is only people our age with older cars are remember, but like my Jeep. So we got a 1984 Jeep CJ7.
You still have it?
Yeah, I plow with it.
Oh.
It's barely limping along. So we started, and you first get it started. If you can get it started, you use starter fluid and massage it and speak to it nicely and stuff, and get started. And the idle set real high, like that. Same thing with chainsaw. I had gas chainsaws out here, start chainsaw like that. And it gets up, and then you can hit the accelerator or hit the gas thing like that. Then it goes, idle comes down. For some reason, I've always had that in mind with exercise, that I'm going along in my day and I'm kind of here. And especially if I'm anxious and I'm worried and I'm dealing with the busyness of life, that sometimes I felt like I do want to just go out and blow it out exercise wise. And maybe I feel like that kind of come up here. And it's what allows me to then come back and go, and just let it down, let the idle down. I like that thought. Don't know if it's totally fair, but
I do think it's fair if that high idle. By that, we mean when you exercise, it's just not heart rate, but it's also heart rate variability. And it's also your breath and the amount of breathing. It's also the stress, and it's the recovery from the stress. All of these things in. And in fact, I was reading about, exercise as relates to weight loss, and we're getting close to saying it's like I was talking with you about it. It might hardly matter. What matters is, did you exercise? The kind, the amount, the length, the breadth, the height, the whatever, the exercise, because all forms of exercise are going to do mindset, breathing, heart rate variability, the idle that you're talking about.
Today's mental health issues, I'm more focused on exercise for that than maybe anything else, even for myself.
Yep. Yeah, totally. And for me, the reason why I wouldn't be exercising is because I'm stressed out in a too busy, too whatever. My schedule's wrong. I get home too late. And I'm too tired, blah, 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 blah. And days goes by.
Yeah.
And it's not good. So I've lost margin. I've lost all those things, which isn't going to help my sleep. And so based on that, if people are in that insomnia or sleep disturbance kind of a place, and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's been weeks. Don't exercise tonight and expect it to fix your sleep problem. But over the next weeks, put it in there, exercise in the way that you like it, do what you like to do, and understand and be aware that is impacting your sleep health.
Yeah. Snoring. I mean, that's such a big one, snoring. And I wanted to put in there devices.
Yeah.
Like on a
mouthpiece and CPAP.
I was just saying the high side, the CPAP, but a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
We did a show recently. I think we called it How to Breathe, and it was on nose breathing. Folks, if you haven't read that, the benefits of at night breathing through your nose, not your mouth, which I am still struggling with. I'm still working. It's a work in progress still for me, but snoring is something that I started doing. And my first treatment that seemed to work, and I realized I do a lot of time on my back, and my lower jaw would drop.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got the idea from reading something, got a mouthpiece. You can get these little mouth guards. You can buy them at, I think, Walgreens, Walmart, whatever. Did that, and it stopped it. Now it also keeps my mouth open so I can mouth breathe. So I have to tape over the thing to stop the mouth breathing with it. But there's my little thing that I've done, but I was having problems with snoring, keeping my wife awake. And of course it's disturbing my sleep, and using a mouthpiece. And I've been playing recently with what are things you put in your nose? What are they called? Not a canister, the dilator.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay.
You buy a little dilator, stuff
nasal
up your nose
dilator, or the Breathe Right strips. And
yeah, Breathe Right didn't help me. So those are things that I play with. And so, but go from there.
Well, I think that's one of our earliest memories together is the phrase that what you think is normal is probably not normal.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And in America, people say I snore, but only when I'm tired, or only here, or, well, he's always done that. Doesn't bother me. for a sleep partner. And I say, well, it's kind of like saying, well, I have breast cancer, but just on one side, like the other side's totally fine. And so snoring is not normal. So it's always pathology.
That's almost a volatile statement.
Right. Like some people are going to hear that and say, oh, what a whack.
Especially I'm going to pick on gender, for men, you're older man, you snore.
Yeah. My dad snored.
And your wife puts up
with wife is, yeah, I know. I don't understand how.
I don't either.
Just especially the buzzsaw snore. And
my wife, Kevin, just turn over, do something. Before I was doing these things, but yeah.
Well, and we were camping man weekend thing. I don't even know if I told you about that. So we're in a cabin, and the first night I was like, I just can't.
I remember you and I going to the one event and it was like 14 guys in one. Man, it was like a chainsaw convention.
It's just, I was like, all right, just relax. So the next night I go downstairs with another dude who couldn't stand the snoring in the room. And he was buzzsawing. Oh. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And I was like, all right, just relax. He'll stop. And he didn't. So I wandered around finding a quiet place and finally did. And he was embarrassed the next morning to say, yeah, about 25% of the time I do. And I was like, what does your wife do? And she's like, she'll just poke me and I'll turn over. And anyway, it's not normal. It is pathological. It is impacting your sleep. The human body is meant to breathe through its nose. And here we are again, right? The average ENT doctor is going to say, oh yeah, let me tell you about that and go on and on about it. But the average human being is going to say, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. I've never been able to breathe through my nose. I have allergies or whatever. And I would say well, you can think of that as normal, but it's just not. And it's creating an impact. And by definition, it impacts your sleep. Your sleep is not as good or restful or rhythmic as it could be.
The book Breathe by James Nestor is the one that we referenced when we did that how to breathe thing. And it is talk about convicting, man. When you read, because this dude's a journalist. He's not a health and wellness, not a doc, not a whatever. He's just a journalist. And they did these tests of only breathing out of the mouth,
which and not that sounds like torture.
And the wreckage that did. That's what bothers me the most in thinking about it and compels me to be breathing through even sitting at my desk. And I'll find sometimes that I'm sitting there with my mouth open and breathe through. So if you want to really we can listen to our show, you can listen to that, or you can just trust Dr. Randy James. He says, man, we are made to breathe through our nose in general, but at night, huge.
In particular, oral health is big. How often you get sick in terms of, the pressure on your lymph nodes, meaning, strep throat and those kind of things. So the downstream effect of your body having to adapt to that, it's like trying to swim with an anchor on. And so what do you do about it? Right? Like that's kind of the next thing. There's all these devices.
Well, I do want to point back to food, because I know, especially prior to me using some of these devices, which, I'd look at that and go, why do I need to use that device?
Right.
It's a crutch, but if
go bigger than food and inhalant allergies, food sensitivities, what's going on in your house.
But I wanted people to, I know that if I do the big bowl of ice cream, it's sugar, especially dairy, causing mucus and stuff, those things I knew, and my wife would testify, I snored more that night. So again, going back to what you eat in regard, I think, is it fair to say, mucus, especially anything that's going to create.
Yeah. Well, why are you creating mucus? It's not that dairy creates mucus in all humans. It's that
my reaction
had an immunological reaction that produced mucus.
Okay.
And that could be to dust or dog or dairy or all the above.
Yeah.
And that was me, right? Growing up with an allergist father. So that was part of our story with me with a catastrophic mouth, like 15 cavities by the age of 10 or some odd thing like that. Wow. And back then, I got told, oh, you have some kind of problem with your saliva, or you have acidic saliva, not my fault, right? Like it's just the classic kind of medical thing. They didn't know.
With my lifetime of mouth breathing, I've had one cavity. Isn't that weird?
Yes, that is weird. And so what do you do about it? And I would say, well, like Kevin said, be aware of the environmental kind of things. So think through that. Do you have chronic rhinitis and your nose is just stuffy? Another one is because we don't eat food that requires chewing. So we have a lot, and plus we have a beauty prospect that thin is beauty. And so women in particular with not a diagnosis of micronathia, but just a small face, and a small face equals a small nose. And we have characterized that as these tall, thin models of good lookingness.
Yeah. It's like the Michael Jackson, go get a nose job and you're going to get
smaller
nasal
and
passages
small,
that, you can't breathe through.
Well, for years, braces did that, right? You pulled too many teeth out and you cramped it down. Now, these days, you do need to, especially for your kids, if you're thinking about braces, they need to pull out.
Mine just went through. I had 3 kids go through the expanders.
Yeah. And I've got a little one. I'd call him near micronathia. He got an underbite. And we're trying to do the myofascial work of expand that. It was in the Breathe book about.
Yeah. And I had the braces that pulled things in. And I think for, maybe because mom, dad, ancestors, whatever, that I do have small nasal. I mean, I can, suck them together. I have smaller, so I'm having to work through that to train them. And
that's where the book has coached us, and it's big fat pain in the rear. I'm a little further. So I'm 2021, 6-8 months now of mouth taping most nights. But when we traveled, I didn't tape. And when we went camping, whatever, I think I stayed closed.
Nice.
Which it would be unusual and encouraging.
So we're talking optimal, breathing through your nose, but even as we're looking at the crutches, man, is it fair to say whatever will get you to stop snoring is a step up?
But be careful. The mouthpieces, you got to worry a little bit about jaw.
Yeah. And that's legit. Cause I've had to play with mine a little bit cause I can wake up with jaw pain.
Yeah. And that can be disastrous.
Yeah.
So we don't generally recommend people go out and buy a mouthpiece. We would recommend, hey, talk to a sleep dentist. It's worth. Now, the problem is you're not optimal. They're going to find something to build a very expensive mouthpiece for almost always.
Yeah.
And that is frustrating. And so I don't really have a quick go-to down that pathway.
Well, just I was ignorant of them. So if you're out there and you notice that your jaw is dropping, it's something you could test out, play with. The nose dilators,
the pusher outers, rather than the Breathe Right strip pulls it out, and those dilators push it out.
Yeah, I was uncomfortable and I'd end up picking off the Breathe Right thing.
Yeah, I didn't like them either.
Dilators, and then CPAP is
now you're into the medical. So if there is any evidence that a spouse would say, yeah, you stop breathing, I would say be very quick to do a polysomnogram. These days you can do it at home. The doc still has to order it. It's probably $300 to do at home to get a very good analysis of your sleep breathing, and if there's any obstruction or central sleep apnea. We do it on nearly every patient because at 8,000 feet, we just need to know. Now, one thing to be clear is the sleep study test does not give you any data on heart rate variability or stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and all that. It's just, are you breathing? Are you snoring, and maybe hyper limb movement?
One thing in this, we do, to be culturally sensitive here, but we tend to correlate some of the snoring, whatever issues, with weight. But is that unfair? Because it's not the weight, it's not extra weight. If we put 50 pounds, 100 pounds of fat on me, it's not the weight causing the snoring. It's just correlated to the food I'm eating.
No, you're wrong.
Oh,
it is correlated. So there is a clear correlation. If you are overweight, you are more likely to have sleep apnea. Right. And the more you have sleep apnea, by the way, the less likely you are to lose weight. Okay. And that's a vicious cycle. Yeah.
Okay.
Very hard to slice in there. And what is the slice? And the slice is, get CPAP.
Yeah.
And so you're splinting open the airway and lose weight, right? So we won't go down that pathway. But yeah, if somebody is 50 pounds overweight, they get put on CPAP, can they come off? And I'd say, yeah, there's a good chance. Now, if you're thin and you've got too much tissue softness or whatever reason why you're falling backwards, losing weight's not going to help that. So then it becomes more of a dental approach or more of a mouth physical therapy approach if you're willing to go down that tedious pathway. And the book actually mentioned that. You might not. I keyed in on it because my youngest son is doing that right now. And it's tedious is the word, and
Mm.
kids don't do tedium. So for our purposes today, for people to just be aware and to be quick to go get a sleep study, because otherwise you're going to cope with this for 10, 15, 20 years. And now the mountain of physiologic consequence that's on you is big. It's related to blood pressure and cholesterol and diabetes and all these things. It's related to dementia. The body cannot be well without effective sleep, and you can't sleep without oxygen.
Well, right in line then with snoring is the issue of co-sleeping, which is it's a weird one.
It's a gift, and it's a
Well,
not gift,
because it is odd. I mean, we remember back in the days, I don't know, the 50s, which was before us or whatever. There was a time when, mom and dad,
his and hers rooms.
yeah, well, or at least
Beds.
separate beds. Yeah. And then now we don't do that, man. You get married or, have a significant other, you sleep together. I'm not at all going to poke at that and say that we shouldn't do that, because there's intimacy and relationship that's a part of it. Talk about sacred again, that you're supposed to be together and share the bed together and whatever. That said, especially with somebody who's with a snorer, I have experienced people, women in my experience, but it could be just the same, or, now we got both genders, whatever, one spouse or the other, suffering dramatic health issues because of sleep problems, because that other person in the bed with them is keeping them awake.
Yep.
Man, that is tragic to me. I mean, literally that one grieves me some when I see that, but it's kind of like we stayed married for 50 years and it was a marriage of hell. Great. You guys existed, in hell with each other. The same thing. We always sleep together, and you're killing yourself.
Yeah.
You're going to sleep. You're going to go to sleep with finality 10 years or sooner than you should have, because your sleep is wrecked because of this person.
And we asked this upfront, very direct. And most of the time it is to the woman. Is sleeping separately for a period of time an option? Is it an option? Or is this a no-go? And if she says it's a no-go, then I would look at the guy and say, you have to change.
You have to change.
For the sake of your spouse, if this is a healthy relationship, then this one is getting hurt physically by this. Would you punch your wife in the nose? No. Well, you are every night, multiple times.
Yeah.
And unconsciously, now it's conscious, okay. Well, and so I would say, just like we would say, is sugar bad for you? Well, for a time, yeah. Go away from it.
Yeah. I was gonna say, and this is one where, gosh, I don't want to, we're in such a volatile time of gender and stereotyping and whatever, but I can only go by experience. There's been so many times when there is, and I saw this here in the practice, when there is a woman pursuing health and wellness who's disappointed at her husband's lack of pursuing health and wellness. And the feeling over here is, well, he's just doing what he's doing, but it's only harming him. Dude, if he is not taking care of himself and he's sleeping poorly and hurting her, he may be the reason she's in here as a patient. Now that's
and the interplay of cycles of all of that going on in there is, and that's why I would look at the couple and say, and of course, by then I already know, is this a healthy marriage? Is the marriage supporting or draining? Right? That's kind of and if you've got a marriage that's on the draining side, then, the last thing somebody else wants to do is be inconvenienced with whatever. And people might say, look, that's just not an option. Or other people who say, no, for the sake of our family, mom, dad sleep together, and, we got little kids and just whatever this is, it's like, we're not going to even entertain the idea of change. Okay. Well, then we have to think of something else to do.
I mean, my mouthpiece that I'm using that right now is keeping me from snoring is helping my wife's health.
Which is helping your marriage.
Which is helping my marriage. It's helping my kids. Now we could say that now we're talking about, spouse or adults, how many people, and again, it seems to fall on the women most. I don't know, maybe both, but when you, what's it called? Co-sleeping with your kid, you have a baby and you have the baby in bed for 6 months or for 6 years. And what is that doing? Now I'll have to, and I've always struggled with being a light sleeper, probably especially in the past, I think when I was doing some things that harmed my sleep. I never slept with our kids or didn't have them sleep with me because it just kept me awake, period. Kids rough, most kids roll around, stick a hand out, whatever. And even the past year, we've had a couple of times with one kid, our youngest, who's been scared or whatever, and you know, come into bed for a minute, and a couple hours later, man, I got a hand on me, I got whatever, and I'm not sleeping. It's a trade-off. I mean, if you believe in, what is it, like attachment parenting? Is that where it comes in sometimes? Is whatever,
I don't know.
co-sleep, whatever. Yeah, the kids sleep with you. That is it maybe you believe it's good for them. We're not going to get into that debate.
Right.
Is it good for you? Are you sleeping okay? Is your spouse or significant other or whatever, are they sleeping well?
Through my lens, and I think most people are kind of down the pathway, well, you're not going to sleep with this kid forever. And it's generally, you know, the kid has to learn how to self-soothe and go to bed at night and all that kind of, and we have these very, very emotional things. And so if the parent is willing to entertain, or if they say, nope, we're doing this until the kid is 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, then okay, you're agreeing to put up with the consequences. Just like, I'm going to drive my car, it doesn't have a seatbelt. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's not going to kill you, but it might.
And you may have a kid that sleeps great and you sleep great anyways. We don't know, but it's you know, it's just a question.
Real quick.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Last
And then,
one.
yeah, the last one we kind of thought about was that a lot of people, surprisingly, you know, you don't think about it unless you deal with it, is restless legs.
Yeah. I heard it a lot. I've not experienced
And it's when it's there, or periodic limb movement. And yeah, it's amazing because I don't experience that. But some people say, holy cow, he or she kicks me out of the bed. I mean, like, it is a kick. And of course, the other person is sound asleep. I did notice it in college one time, and I was over at somebody else's, you know, multiple people sleeping in somebody else's room or something like that. And this one kid, I'm like, I remember, I was like, what are you doing with your feet? And the other one said, oh my gosh, she does it all the time, just constant. And I'm like, just stop that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I don't know why I do it.
Duct tape those things together.
He's like, and of course, back then I had no medical knowledge of anything, but that was it. That was just his. And he saw it as a self-soothing kind of how I hold my pillow when I go to bed kind of a thing. And I'm like, okay, but man, was that annoying. And to think you're going to bed with that every night if your spouse does that. So it's a big deal. No known cause, no known cure. Like, what's the underlying root of this kind of thing? Personally, I think it is going to be related to, you know, what's the whole big picture going on. And there are some classic things. So iron deficiency, right? So just take some iron. I'd throw magnesium in there as well. And I'd throw B complex vitamin in there as well.
If it's a movement thing, is it still not fair to say it could be, it's probably affected by any of these stimulants? It's exacerbated by.
Yes, it is lack of settling.
Okay.
Think of attention deficit hyperactive kids. They're hyperactive. Why? Because they can't settle. And even the medicines that they get is Ritalin. More energy, which is speed, gets put into these kids so that they can focus and attend. And it paradoxically seems like they be still. And now we're going back to sleep. And I'm saying, yeah. It requires energy input in a different form so that you can attain a higher state of settling. And if you can't attain that because there's deficiencies in omega, vitamin D, magnesium, iron, or exercise, that's a big one for the RLS people, then yeah, your legs move and it becomes disruptive and whatever else. And so that's a vast oversimplification of what's a complex neurological thing. And I would say, no, it's RLS is a simplification of the complex non-RLS existence. When you have restful legs, don't think of that as, oh, I'm normal and I'm so lucky. Think of that as, I am so complexly, finely in tune that my legs will actually settle. Wow. Think of that the next time you're falling asleep.
There we go. There's our ending. I am so grateful for how I'm sleeping, and I'm going to be more grateful tonight. So thanks for that.